Hi, this is Ali Arango for Game Visuals, and what you're going to learn today is how to do a beat 'em up combo in Gdevelop. So what you're going to learn is you're going to learn how to bring in this background. You're going to learn how to bring in sprites for your player character as well as for your enemy character. You're going to learn how to set up your character to be able to move up and down. You're going to learn how to set up variables to show as numbers, kind of like what you can see right here, as well as over your enemy. You're going to learn how to, when you punch your enemy, them to have random poses and then go back to the resting pose. Then you're going to learn how to have your character go through punch combinations. As I work through this tutorial, I tried to explain not only what I'm doing, but why I'm doing. And I hope that you'll learn a lot from this tutorial, and I hope you'll enjoy the tutorial. Thanks for watching. Hi, this is Ali Arango of Game Visuals. Today I want to show you how to do a beat 'em up combo in Gdevelop. So let's get started. Okay, we're going to start this off from scratch, which is how I like to do Gdevelop combo tutorials. So what we're going to do is select create a new project. Once you select create a new project, you see all these different options here. Typically the first thing you want to do is choose a folder. So you want to select somewhere where you know your game is going to be saved at. So I'll just make this folder here. So I'll double click. I'll select there. I'll select folder. And then now I'll just select empty game. Okay, so here we are in Gdevelop. So to start things off in Gdevelop, the first thing you want to do is make a new scene. So we'll go to this plus button here, select that, and then a new scene is made. By default, it's called new scene. We're going to left click on these three buttons here, select rename. We're going to name this beat 'em up combo, then press enter. Okay, once we do that, we'll select on that scene, and then we have the rest of Gdevelop open up to us. Okay, as we get ready to get into this tutorial, I want to give credit to where credit is due. I actually learned how to do this from a YouTuber named Sparkman. So if you want to learn more about this, I recommend you go check out Sparkman's YouTube channel. He made it actually on one of his other channels. However, I'm assuming if you go to Sparkman's channel, you'll be able to go from there to his other channel. I cannot think of the name, but I did learn this technique from Sparkman, so I'm going to give you my version of what I learned from him. Okay, so we're going to need to bring in a bunch of objects. So we're going to go to the right, select the plus button. We're going to go to a sprite. Typically, you'll find yourself doing this quite often in Gdevelop. Like you'll go to the right, make a new sprite. We're going to need a player sprite. So we're going to name this player. For now, we're just going to select apply. We'll come back and put the graphics in later. We need a enemy sprite. So we're going to name this enemy. We'll select apply and come back to that later. Okay, we're going to need an environment. We'll select plus. We're just going to keep using this sprite. So we're going to name this environment. Then we'll select apply. We'll set that up later as well. We're also going to need a hitbox graphic. So we'll select the plus again, go to the sprite again, and then we'll name this hitbox and then select apply for that as well. Okay, we're going to start bringing in graphics. So I'm going to double click on this player here. And what I'm going to do is go to this blue button to the right, select that. Typically this first animation, which is the 0 animation, is the idle animation. So I'll just name this idle. I'm going to select add. You want to go to where you have the store. These frames that I'm using, I'll put a link to these on the website. Also put one in the description so you can get to these. So I'll select idle here. I'm going to hold Control, press A, and then I'll select OK. Then this box right here is basically saying, do I want to move the frames to the main game folder? Yes, I do. When you're doing with an idle animation, you want this to loop. You can preview the animation by selecting here. If you roll your mouse, you'll zoom up and down. You can use these buttons here to zoom in and out. This will restore your original size. You can also hold Control and zoom in and out. This is fine how it is. So I'll select OK. I'm going to click to the right. I'm going to add another animation. This is going to be our walk animation. So I'll just name that walk. Pretty much the same thing. Find the folders, hold Control, press A, bring in those folders, select OK. We actually do want this to loop, so we'll select that there. And pretty much I'm just going to go through. I'm going to do this in real time so you can see what's going on. This is going to be punch 1. We'll go to those frames. Select that punch 1. We don't want this to loop, so we'll select punch 2. Select add. Again, we don't want this to loop. So this is going to be punch 3. Add. Control A. We don't want that to loop either. So now this is going to be kick. My daughter nicely animated these kick frames for me. So we press Control A, select open, bring these in. So now we have all of our frames brought in. So for now, we're going to select apply. Okay, so now we're going to do pretty much the same thing with the enemy characters. So we're going to select enemy. We'll select animation to the right. This is going to be E idle, short for enemy idle. We'll select add. We'll go to the folder that has those frames. Oop. There we go. So we'll select Control A, open, bring these into the main folder. We'll select loop. So we're going to add another animation, and this is these animations are going to be animations of the enemy taking a hit. So I call this ETAH1. So we'll go find that. Trying to see, I'm not sure if these are transparent or not. For now, we'll hold Control, press A. We'll bring those in. We'll select another animation. E stands for taking a hit, that ta. Second. find that. Control A. So one more. It's E, taking a hit 3. Go find that. Okay, so now we'll apply this as well. Okay, we want to bring our environment in now, so we'll double click that. Go to Edit Animation. We're just going to leave this. We'll leave it as it is. We'll go to Add. Environment. Select Open. We'll apply that. We'll zoom back. We'll left click and drag the environment over here. I'm going to go to this corner, hold Shift, shrink this down. Okay, I made 2 environmental pictures, so we'll use that. So we'll make another sprite for the environment. So we'll select Add an animation, add. We'll go and find that environment. We'll select OK. OK. Apply. We'll drag that onto the screen. We'll zoom back. Mainly so we can match this up. So I'm just matching the top of this up with that. I'm going to hold Shift. Just getting this down to about the size that it is over on the other side. I don't even notice it was overlapping like that. Okay, that is interesting. Just when I made this up, I'm trying to think how I ended up having this come out like this, but that's fine. Okay, we are gonna need something else. We're gonna need something to walk on. So let's make up this hitbox. We're gonna select this. We're gonna select Add an animation. For what we're gonna do here is we're gonna select Add. Wait a second. Okay, this is what we want. We want Edit with Piskel. And I'm just gonna select like a orange color. Pixel is a built-in image editor inside of Unity. It's actually very nice. I'm gonna select here. Just fill that with like orange. And then I'm going to go and duplicate this. Make about 5 frames. And then I'm going to select save. And then I'm going to select apply. And now we have a hitbox graphic right there. Okay, these graphics here are basically background graphics. I'm going to left click on this one. Notice when I left click on this properties panel opens up. This Z order here is important. The lower this number is, the further the graphics are in the background. So when we left click on this, we can make this be 1 as well. The player and enemy characters, we're going to want to have a higher Z order than these background graphics. Okay, so while we have the Z order here set, what we can do is we can go to this part of the menu where we see lock position, angle, and editor. So we'll put a check mark next to there. We'll select this one, put a check mark next to here as well. Be aware that when you put a check mark next to there, like if I try to select this, I can't select it now. So if you want to reselect this, what you need to do is go to your upper right to where you see the this button that says open a list of instances. Then when I double click here, now I can select, and then this would allow me to unlock, either one of these sprites that we're working with here. For now, though, they're fine being locked. Okay, we do need something else, and what that is we need a ground for our characters to stand on. So what I'm going to do is select this plus button here. I'm going to go to sprite. I'm going to name this ground. I'm going to select edit animation. I'm going to go to edit with Piscal. This is going to be something that we're going to make basically be invisible, so I tend to use green for that. So this is a paint bucket I'm selecting here, and I'm just going to fill this. I'm going to name this ground. You don't have to name this picture. Just want you to know you don't have to do this for any type of coding reason. I'm just choosing to do this. So then I'm going to select save. And then what I'm going to do here is since we're here, I'm going to add a behavior to this. And we're going to add behaviors. Well, we're going to add a behavior to our player character. And what a behavior does is a behavior is kind of like a bundle of coding. So the behavior I'm going to add to this is going to give this sprite the ability to not allow objects to fall through it. Characters will also be able to jump on it. So we're going to select add a new behavior, and then we're going to, when we click that, we have these list of options here. And they're pretty self-explanatory. We want to go to the platform behavior, so we'll select this. We'll leave this default, then we'll select apply. Okay, the reason why I have this so zoomed out is easy to work with for now. I'm thinking about having a player character walk here, drop down there, and probably have an enemy character be around here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to left click on ground. I'm going to left click and drag this out. And I know that's very small. I'm going to go to this square and I'm going to drag this out here and make this smaller. So I want the player character to walk on top of here. I think I want the player character to fall down slightly here. So I'm going to hold control, left click and drag. And what that does is that makes a duplicate. Yeah, I think I'll leave that like that. So these are both two pieces of the same object, so they both have platform behavior on them. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to select our player character, drag the player character out. We'll zoom in. You can see the player character is huge. So we'll select the player character, go to this corner, hold shift. This will constrain the view. That size looks fairly decent. Okay, one of the nice things about Gdevelop is those behaviors. So we can give this character the ability to move. So we'll double click on the player character. We'll select behaviors, very similar to like we did with the platform. We'll select add a behavior to the object. We'll select platform behavior, and then we'll just leave all of this default. We could change this if you want it. This is good how it is. We'll select apply. Okay, so with that done, we'll go to this upper right, to this preview button. Now we can see our player character, and when I move the controls, the player character moves. The animation isn't set yet, though you can see the player character is already doing their idle animation. So we need to adjust things. Well, actually we don't. We don't actually need, I was thinking we need to adjust this to make it look like the player character is on here, but we actually don't, since we're going to make this be invisible. However, we do need to set the animation up for the player character so that it animates when it moves. Okay, to set that up in Gdevelop, the way I think of Gdevelop is like the left is the creative. So left is like here. I say left, right, because this is like the creative part here. This is the programming part here. So on the left side, you do creative things. You bring in your assets, arrange them, set them up. On the right side, you do your programming. So I'm going to left click on the events, and that's how we program things in Gdevelop, is with events. This right here says there's no events here. Events are composed of conditions and actions. Add your first event using the first buttons of the toolbar. So what we want to do is select this button here. And now we have our first event, which is composed of a condition as well as an action. Basically what the condition says is when you do something, and then the action says what to do when this condition happens. Okay, so one of the things we can do, let's add a condition. The first thing we'll do is we'll make that green ground appear to disappear. I guess disappear. So we'll select scene, and then at the beginning of the scene, the conditions are pretty well set up. They make sense. So when the scene starts, the scene is what we're working in. So we're saying, remember I told you on the left, we say, when something happens, and then the right says what to do. So what we want to happen here is we're going to select add action. We're going to go to common actions for all objects, visibility, hide. And what we want to do is hide this ground. So we'll select OK. So we're saying at the beginning of the scene, hide that ground. So the ground will still be there. It'll just be hidden. So if we select to go to the creative side and then select the preview, now our character looks like the character is just on the ground, which is what we want. Okay, what we're going to do is go back to our programming, and we want to make a new event. Now we can make conditions that are connected to this one event here as well as actions. We don't want to do that. To make sure we make a whole new event, you want to make sure you have this entire event selected. You can tell that the entire event selected because you'll see this blue line basically highlighting the whole event. So with that done, you'll select add new event. So we have a separate event here, and that's what we want now. So what we want to do is we're going to go add condition, and then we're going to platform behavior, right? So we're going to select there, and basically what we want right here is these give us different ways of setting up the character, a character that has platform behavior on it, how to work with it. So we want to choose the players on the floor. And, well, we set choose floor. Now we let Gdevelop know we want to work with the player. So then we'll select OK. Okay, there's multiple ways of setting things up in Gdevelop as well as the programming side of Gdevelop. We want to set things up to make them easy to understand and fairly We want to do the least amount of work that we have to do to get things to work right. So one of the ways we can do that is this is an event. So what we can do is we can make sub-events that are connected to this. So this would be the overarching thing. Like we're like, look, when the player is on the floor, we want something to happen, right? So what we want to do now is we want to add a sub-event. So this is the event. This is a sub-event. So we'll select here. And what we want to do now is say when the player is on the floor as well as the player is moving. So we'll select here, platform behavior, and then we'll select is moving. And then we want to work with the player. So what we want is Gdevelop to say, okay, when the player is moving, we want something to happen. And that thing that we want to happen is we want the player to walk. So we're going to select add action. We'll go to sprite, animations and images, change the animation by name. We're going to select player. Then we need to choose the name. I think I named it just walk. Then we'll select OK. I'll go back. Double click on the player. Yeah, so I just named that walk. Select apply. Apply didn't do anything. I just clicked apply to get out of that right there. So now when the player is moving, the player is going to walk, right? So when we want to set something up for when the player isn't moving, we just invert this. So what we can do here is we can actually copy this, use the same amount of visual code to set up the idle. So we'll right click, select copy, and then we'll select to make, actually we want to select here first, the main event, and then go to sub event to make another sub event. So then we'll left click here, and I have this whole thing highlighted blue because I copy this whole thing. I want to paste that right here. So I'll right click and then I'll select paste. And then what I can do now is double click here, select invert the condition. So I'm saying when the player is not moving, I want something to happen. And what I want to happen, now I can click on this word and just go right here, or I can double click to go inside of here. So if I double click, we can work here, or we can select here. So I'm going to change this to idle. I'm going to, oops. All right, so I'll just click off that. So now this is set for idle. Okay, so we have things set up. So when the player is on the floor and the player is moving, the player will walk. When the player is not moving, the player will do its idle pose. However, we need to set this character that only faces to the left. As far as the sprites, we need to tell Gdevelop to flip the character when the character goes to the right. So the way we're going to do that is go to add condition, keyboard. We'll select key pressed. We'll scroll down and we're looking for the right button. So there we go. So we're saying when the right button is pressed, we want something to happen. So we're going to go to add action, sprite, effects, flip the object horizontally. We want to work with the player, and then we want this to flip. We want this to flip because the character is facing towards the left, how the sprite is set up. So when we press the right, we want this to flip to the right. So now we want when the character is going to the left for the character not to flip. So the way we can do that is we'll select this main event. We're selecting this main event so that when we add a sub event, it'll go underneath here, but still be connected to this main event. So with this selected, we can tell this is selected because it's highlighted blue. We'll select this sub event. And because the information is mainly going to be the same, we're just going to copy this and then paste that to here. So we're going to right click, select copy, and then left click here, right click, select paste. So this information is currently the same. However, very quickly, we can double click, look for the left button, Select OK. And now for this flipping, we could select here. I'm just going to go inside. And we're going to select activate flipping, no. So then we'll select OK. Okay, with that set up, we're going to go to the creative mode of Gdevelop. We'll select the preview button. So now when I push to the right, the character moves to the right, as well as to the left. The character is moving like they're supposed to move. So now when the character gets to the end of the screen, the character, will walk off the screen. We want to have the camera actually follow the character. So we'll select to go back to our programming side of Gdevelop. Okay, in Gdevelop, this condition, when we put something here, it says when something happens, the action says what to do. What happens when we don't put something here? When we don't put something here, Gdevelop will constantly look to do this action. That's what we want in this case. So we'll leave this blank. We'll go to add action. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go to layers and cameras. And what we want to do is select center the camera on an object within limits. So we'll select that. We'll select the player. For this, we want to press 0. We want to press 0 for here. For this, we're going to just put in a low high definition setting here, 720, and then we'll select OK. Okay, I typically have to experiment a little to get this to be right. Let's go to the creative view. We'll select preview. So now when we have our character walk, it's actually pretty good. Okay. So we have this space right here. Okay, we're going to go back to the programming side of Gdevelop. Okay, so our height is actually 600, so let's try putting in that height. The default Gdevelop is 800 wide by 600 high. So we'll put in 600 here. Go back to our creative view. Yeah, and that works, so excellent. Okay, so what we can do is place our enemy character. So we'll left click on enemy character, bring the enemy character in. We'll bring it over here for now. We'll hold shift to constrain enemy character. We're trying to make it be basically the same size as the player. I want the enemy character to face towards the player. Okay, I think we can do that fairly easily by going to our programming and see this at the beginning of the scene. So I'm going to go to add action. And I'm going to go to sprite, effects, flip the object horizontally. I'm going to select the enemy. And I'm going to select yes. So I'm going to select OK. So what we're saying is at the beginning of the scene, hide the ground as well as flip the enemy character. So we'll go back to here. I'm going to put the enemy character over here. Just hold the middle mouse button to move this. I want them to be around here like that. So let's see. So our player character walks over. Yep. An enemy character is not doing their idle pose for some reason, but they are flipped. Okay, there were some issues with the naming of the enemy sprites, which I fixed in editing. Okay, while we're here in the creative mode of Gdevelop, what we're going to do is hover over the screen, right click, select scene properties, and then we're going to go to edit scene variables, and we're going to select this plus button. Then we're going to name this scene variable combo, and we're just going to put in 0 for here, and then apply that. Okay, what we're going to do now is set up so our main character can punch. So we're going to go to our event. And what we're going to do is we're going to select this event, and we're selecting this. We're making sure this is fully highlighted so that we can make a new event. Okay, so what we're going to do here is set it up so that when we press a button, our character punches. So we're going to go to Add Condition, Keyboard, Key Pressed. I'm going to use the C key, and then I'm going to choose C, and then select OK. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to go to Action. Remember, in Gdevelop, the condition basically says when something happens. The action says, what to do when that happens. So we're going to go to Add Action. We're going to go to Sprite, Animations and Images, and then we're going to select Change the Animation. We're dealing with the player. So we're going to select here. We're going to select Equal. And then for here, we're going to put 1. And then we're going to press OK. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to go back to the creative part of Gdevelop. We're going to double click on our player. See how the idle animation says 0? Okay, this is 1. It's actually a set when we press the C key to activate this animation. We don't want that. We actually want this animation 2. I brought you here because I wanted to show you, just how each animation has a number. And that's what we're going to be using to work our way through our animations. So I'm going to click Apply. We didn't change anything. I just clicked Apply to get out of that menu. So I'm going to go back to here. I'm going to double click here. And I'm going to change this to 2. I'm going to press OK. So now I'm going to go to the Preview button. And now when I press the... interesting... Surprised. C key is pressed. Change the number of animation to 2. Okay. Okay, there's good news and bad news. I found out what was causing this not to work. There's something about the platform behavior that tends to cause things like when you add things like punches, the platform behavior not to work. So we're going to have to remove that behavior. The good news is this tutorial is going to be more in-depth, and our character is actually going to have more ability to move around because of what we're going to change to make this work. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go to the creative part of Gdevelop. We're going to double click on our player. We're going to go to behaviors, and then we're going to select this trash can to get rid of the platform behavior. We'll select OK. We're going to select add a behavior to the object. We want to add a top-down behavior. And then what we want to do is take away the default controls as well as the rotate object. And then we're going to select apply. Just going back to make sure that behavior is on. Okay, it is. Okay, now we're going to go back to our events page. And what we're going to do is we have these, we'll be able to keep this. So these are currently connected to this event. We're going to select this blue and move these up. And by doing this, we're effectively disconnecting these sub-events and making them their own events and taking them away from this. For this event here, I'm going to select this event, delete it. When I delete this, the sub-events will be deleted as well. So I'm going to right-click and then select delete. Okay, so what's going on here is when we press the right key, this flip horizontal is still fine. We're going to go to add action. We're going to go to top-down movement. And then we're going to go to movement. Okay, not movement. Controls. We're going to select simulate right key press for the player. And then we're going to go to add action, sprite, animations and images, change the animation by name, select the player, and then we're going to select, type in walk. That's what we're doing. So we'll select OK. And then what we can do is we'll select here, right click, copy. And when we hover over this add action, we get this paste action. So we'll select that. And then we'll select here, right click, copy, hover here, move this over, then left click to paste that. Okay, so what's going on here is we're saying when the right key is pressed, simulate pressing right. This will make the player walk right, as well as this will activate the walk animation. We copied this here. We need to flip still. We copied this from above, so what we need to do is double click here. And then we need to select simulate left key press. It's the player, and then we'll select OK. Okay, with that done now, we'll go back to the creative mode. We'll select play. And we'll see that when we press to the right, our player walks. However, the player doesn't stop walking, but the player, it animates. And then when I press the C key, we have our punch. We still have to have that go because I pressed it once and it punched, but it didn't punch again. Okay, so what we need to do now is since we were doing this work, we want to have our character be able to move up and down now. So that's what our character is going to benefit from. Before, our character would only move left or right. Now the character is going to be able to actually move up and down. So to do that, what we can do is we'll select here. We'll make we have this selected. We can tell because it's highlighted blue. We'll make a new event. So we have this empty event, right? We're going to click in this white part of this event, right click, select copy, and then we're going to left click on this empty event, right click, and then select paste. And now we have all of this information. We have this new event that was made. We're going to do the same thing here. We're going to select paste. And we're doing this so that we can easily work with this for what we're about to do. Okay, and what we want to do here is we're going to change this to keyboard key pressed. We're going to change this to up instead of left. So we'll select up. Okay. And then where we have this this flip horizontal, we don't need this. So we'll select here, right click, then select delete. And then we have the simulate left. So what we want to do is change this to simulate up. So we'll select simulate pressing up. It's the player. Then we'll press OK. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to double click here. We're going to change this to down. So down, we'll select OK. Okay, so now we'll go to here. We want to simulate down key press, select player. Then we'll select OK. Okay, so with that done, now what should happen is when we press to the left, we walk left, press to the right, we walk right, press to the left, we walk left, press up, we walk, down, we walk. So that's good. Okay, now we need to set up the so the character has its idle pose when it is not walking. So to do that, what we're going to do is go to add condition, keyboard, key pressed. Let's do right. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to left click here, right click, and then select copy, and then oops. Oh, there, and then there. And the reason why we did that was so we could come here, change this to left, change this to up, change this to down. And what we want to do is double click here, select invert the condition. So we're just going to invert the condition for all these. Basically what we're saying is when the button isn't pressed, we want Gdevelop to do something. Okay, and what we want Gdevelop to do is to set when those buttons aren't pressed for our character to go into its idle pose. So we're going to go to sprite, animations and images, change the animation by name, select the player, and then we're going to put quotation, idle, and then select OK. Okay, when this happens, we only want this to happen once, so we'll add another condition. We'll go to advanced and we'll select trigger once while true. Okay, with all that set up, let's go back to our creative mode. We'll select play. So now our player character is at rest. So when we walk, we let go. Our player character stops walking and goes back to their idle position. So the nice thing is the character can, move around the screen, animates correctly as they move around the screen. They can go, a lot more movement than they would have had before. Okay, what we need to do now is when I go to click the preview button and then I press the C key, okay, we actually have nothing happening now. I'm going to add, go to advanced, trigger once while true. Okay, to get this to work, we're going to go to add condition, sprite, animations and images, and then we're going to select current animation, player. For this, we're going to select equals, and then we're going to set this to 0. Let's try this now. Okay, what's going on here is we need to set all these to activate just once. So we're going to go to add condition, advanced, trigger once while true, then select OK. We'll select the preview. Now when we press the C key, we can see our character punches. So now we need to get this working. So we're going to add another new event. Okay, what we're going to do here is we're going to go to add condition, sprite, animations and images. We're going to select animation finished. So we're going to go to player, then select OK. Then we're going to go to add condition, sprite, animations and images. Then we're going to select current animation, player. We're going to select equal. Then we're going to set this to 2. So that we're putting this to 2 because this is the punch animation is in the 2 animation spot. Okay, what we want to do here is we're kind of actually doing like the opposite of this here. So what we're going to do is we're going to select add action, sprite, animations and images, and then we're going to select change the animation, player, equal, and then we're going to put a 0 here and then select OK. Okay, so now when we go to preview, we press our punch. We can punch. We can also move around. So this is working correctly. Okay, what we're going to do now is go back to Gdevelop's creative mode. We're going to make a new object. This is going to be a text object, so we'll select text. We're going to name this text. We're going to change the color to a yellow color. Then we're going to select apply. And then what we're going to do is we're going to drag this text over top of our player character. We're going to go to our upper right to our layers editor. We're going to go to add a new layer. We're going to name this new layer UI. We'll just select off of that with this text selected. We're going to go to our left where we see it's on a base layer, and we're going to move it to the UI, which is the layer that we just made. The reason why we made that text is we want to go to events. We want to use that text to help us work with variables. We're going to click this event. We have this whole thing highlighted because the whole thing has that blue line around it. We're going to make a new event. In Gdevelop, the condition tells us when something happens. The action tells us what to do when that happens. When there's no condition, then Gdevelop pretty much says do whatever the action we put in constantly, and that's what we want. So we're going to go to add action. We want to go to text object. We're going to select modify the text. Select text. We're going to select equal to. We're going to select this blue button, select variables, select text of a scene variable, and then we're going to select combo. And that's the name of our variable, then select apply, and then we'll select OK. Okay, with that done, we'll go to the preview, and hopefully you can see that 0 there, and that 0 shows us basically what's going on with our scene variable. Okay, we want to have our player be able to hit the enemy character. And to do that, what we're going to do is we have this highlighted blue, this event. We're going to select the plus button. We're going to go to add condition, sprite, animations and images. We're going to select current animation, player, equal to, and this is going to be 2. Okay, what we want to do is set things up so that when the player throws a punch, a hitbox is made. So we're going to go to add condition, sprite, animations and images, select current frame, player, equal, and then we're going to set this to 4. And then select OK. We only want this to happen once, so we're going to go to add condition, advanced, trigger once while true, then OK. Okay, now we need to tell the hitbox to be made, so we're going to go to add action, common actions for all objects, There's create an object from its name. We don't want that. We want create in object. We're going to select hitbox. We're going to select this blue button. Common expressions for all objects, position, exposition. The exposition of the player is what we want. We're going to select apply. We're going to do the same thing here. Common expressions for all objects, position, Y position, player. Then we're going to select OK. Okay, what's going on here is we're telling the hitbox to appear on the X and Y position of the player. However, we need to go back. We need to go to here, press space, plus, then put in 100, space, plus 20, and then select OK. Okay, what should happen now is when we select the preview, when we punch, okay, so we don't see the hitbox, and we probably don't see the hitbox because it's behind the layer. So what we'll do is we'll go to add action, common actions for all objects, go to Z order, select Z order, select the hitbox, we'll select equal, we'll make this be, make it 10, select OK, select preview, And now we can see there's the hitbox. So now we don't want that hitbox to just remain there. So what we're going to do is we're going to select make sure we have this selected, add a new event, and then we're going to go to add condition, sprite, animations and images. We're going to select animation finished for the hitbox. Then we're going to select OK. Okay, so what we're going to do now is go to add action, common actions for all objects, delete an object, and then we're going to select hitbox. So now we're going to go to the preview, and then when we press the C key, the hitbox comes out and then it disappears, which is what we want. Okay, now we want to make it so that the enemy can be hit by our player character. So to do that, we'll add a new event. We'll go to add condition, common expressions for all objects, collision, then collision. We'll select enemy. We'll select the hitbox. We'll leave the rest of those settings, or that other setting default. We'll select OK. Then we'll go to add action, sprite, animations and images. We'll select change the animation, enemy, equal to, and this will be 1. Then we'll select OK. We're going to need for the enemy to go back to what it was doing, go back to its idle. So we'll select to make another event. We'll select add condition. We'll go to sprite, animations and images, animation finished, the enemy. We'll select OK, and then we'll select add action, sprite, animations and images, change the animation, enemy, equal. We'll put 0 here, which should take it back to its idle stance. Okay, let's try this out. So we'll go to preview. We'll walk over. Walk down. And there we go. That enemy looks like it's getting hit. Okay, one of the things we can do when we're working in Gdevelop to give ourselves more space is we can put things in groups. So what I mean is we can select this event. I'll hold shift. By holding shift, I'm able to select more than one event at a time. So we have all of these events. So what we're going to do is right click, and then we're going to select move events to a group. And then we have this group here. This is a movement event. So we're going to, or these are movement events. So we'll name that movement. Now we have more space to work with here. Okay, one of the things we want to deal with is when we press play. When we walk over to the enemy, we're going to, when we press the punch button, we can see that the enemy responds the same way every time. We want to set that up so the enemy goes to other poses than just that pose. Okay, to set that up, we need to add a variable to the enemy. So we'll go to the enemy, we'll go to these 3 dots, we'll left click there, we'll select edit object variables. There's no variables yet, so we're going to select the plus button. We'll name this variable something that's easy to change. So we'll name this RP for random pose. We'll set this to 0, and then we'll select apply. Okay, one of the things we can do to make things easier for ourselves is we can put text over the enemy's head. So I'm going to hold the middle mouse button to move the screen. I'm going to go to this plus button. I'm going to go to text. I'm going to name this text E text for enemy text. I'm going to go to color. I'll change this to a greenish color. I'll select apply. Then I'm going to drag this and put this over the enemy's head. And very similar to what we did before, we're going to go to events. We'll select here to make sure we're highlighted on that whole event. We'll select the plus. We don't want a condition because we want Gdevelop to constantly do what we want it to do, which is modify the text. So we'll go to add action. We'll look for the text object, which is here. And then we'll select modify the text. It's eText. We want this to be equal to. So we'll go to this button here. And what we want is common conditions for all. Since this is an object variable, we'll select variables here. Then we'll select object variable. It is the enemy, and it's that variable there. So then we'll select apply. Then we'll select OK. Okay, with that, now when we select the play button, we should be able to walk over to the enemy. And now you can see the enemy's variable above their head is equal to 0. If you're wondering why the variable over our player character's head moves, it's because we put that on the UI. We're not concerned about doing that as far as the enemy. We're just using it just so we can get those random poses in when we punch the enemy. And when I say it, I mean the enemy's variable. Okay, one of the things we want to do now is make sure that when the enemy is just standing there, that its variable is equal to 0. Pay attention to where we have the animation of this hitbox is finished. Delete the hitbox. This comes right after we punch the enemy. So this is where we want to have our visual code that sets up for the enemy's variable to be equal to 0. So we're going to go to add condition, common conditions for all objects, variables, value of an object's variable. That would be the enemy's. We're going to select the variable, select here, and what we're going to do here is we want this to be greater than 0. Then we'll select OK. Okay, so what we want to do now is when the enemy's variable setting is 0, we want that to play the idle animation. So we're going to go to sprite, animations and images, and then change the animation enemy equal to 0. Okay, the reason why that was important is we want to make sure that the enemy goes back to its idle animation. So with that done, we'll select here. We want to make sure this is highlighted blue, just so we can easily make our new empty event. So we're going to go to add condition, common conditions for all objects. We want to work with the enemy's variable. We'll select value of an object's variable, enemy. We select its variable, select equal to, and then what we're going to do is set this to 1. And then select OK. And then what we're going to do here is we're going to go to add action, sprite, animations and images, change the animation enemy equal to 1. Okay, so what this basically means is when enemy's variable is equal to 1, the enemy is going to play the animation 1 of its animation. Okay, so now that we have that set up, what we'll do is we'll go up to event to make a new event. We'll right click, select copy, and then we're just going to paste that code for as many as the animations that we want to work with. Okay, and we did that, so we can just easily change these numbers. So this is going to be 2. This is going to be 3. This is going to be 0. So these are going to match. So 1 is with 1 over here. This is going to be 2. 3. 0. Okay, so this says whenever the setting is 1, 2, 3, or 0, the animation it's set for like animation 1, animation 2, animation 3, animation 0, and when I'm saying the numbers, it's the position of the animation. So like typically animation 0 is idle, and that's when we originally put the sprites in. When we first bring them into Gdevelop, you can see those animation numbers. Okay, so currently we have when the collision of the enemy, when the enemy is in collision with the hitbox, it changes to the first animation. What we want to do is set this to be random. So we'll select here. We'll select enemy. And then instead of this 1, we'll go to the blue here. We'll go to common expressions for all objects. We'll go to random. And we want to look for random integer in range. We'll select that. There's 3 animations, so we'll press 1 for the minimum and then 3 for the maximum. Then we'll select apply, and then we'll select apply. Okay, what we want to happen is when the enemy is in collision with the hitbox, we want the variable to change. We have this set for animation, so this needs to be set for the variable of the object. So we'll go to common actions for all variables, modify the variable of an object, empty, change this to RP, equals, we'll do the same thing again, common expressions for all, random integer in range 1, 3, and this just means, you know, between the range of 1 and 3, Gdevelop will randomly go between those animations. Then we'll select OK. Okay, this right here isn't good because this says when something happens, this happens. So as far as change the number of the animation set to 0, we already have this here, so we don't need that. This needs to be put here. This will stop the box from disappearing. So we'll select here, right click, select cut, paste that there. Then here we'll left click there, right click, then select delete. Okay. We'll select here, advanced trigger once. And then here, advanced trigger once. Let's try this and see if it works. So we'll walk over. Okay, and that's obviously not right. Okay, when we look right here, this should be a variable and not an animation. So I'll double click here. We'll go to common actions for all objects, go to variables, modify the variable of an object, select enemy, select the variable, set this to equal to, and then set this to 0. And we'll preview this and see if this works. And now that is working. Okay, what we need to do now is set up so our combo works for our player when you press the C key more than once. So to do that, what we want to do is we want to set things up so that when the player is in collision with the hitbox, the scene variable changes. So we'll go to add action. This time we're going right to variables, not common actions for our variables. And when we go right to variables, we get the scene variable. So this is the variable. And what we want to do is add to this variable. We're going to set this to 2 and then select OK. So what we just did is whenever the hitbox comes in collision with the enemy, +2 will be added to the variable. So now what we want to do is go to here. We want to select add condition, variables, to get the scene variable. And remember, we went just to variables, not common conditions for all objects. If we went there first and then variables, that's how you get to the object of variable. So we want to select combo. And then what we want here is less than, and then we want 50. Okay, so what's going on here is the scene variable. There's 2 variables we've been working with. The scene variable that's on the scene, and then another variable that's on the enemy. We're currently working with the scene variable, okay? The scene variable starts off being equal to 0. Whenever the scene variable comes in contact with the whenever the enemy comes in contact with the hitbox, the scene variable is going to have +2 added to it. This is saying whenever the variable is less than 50, the regular punch is going to come out. So what we're going to do is select here. We can tell this whole event is selected. When I say here, I mean the whole event because it's highlighted blue. You're going to select up to the upper right the button to add a new event. And we're going to right click on the event we were just working on, select copy, left click in this new event, right click, and then select paste. The reason why we're doing this is we want for when we want to change this to when the scene variable is greater than 50, we're going to make our player character go to another animation. So we'll double click here, and then we'll select that combo, and then we'll just change this to greater than, and then we'll select OK. Okay, what we have set up is whenever the enemy comes in contact with the hitbox, +2 will be added to the variable. We need a way to bring the variable back down to 0. So what we're going to do is go to add condition. We're going to just variables so we can get to the scene variable. That's what we want, a scene variable. We're going to select there. We're going to select that variable. And then what we're going to do here is we're going to go to greater than, and then we're going to set this to be 0, and then we're going to set this to OK. Okay, so basically what we're saying here is when the this scene variable is higher than 0, we want something to happen. So we're going to go to add action. We're going to go to variables, scene variable, select that variable, and then what we want to happen is for a subtraction of 1 to happen to that variable. Okay, with all that done, let's see if this works. Up. Wait a second. We need to change this to 3. So now let's see if it works. And see that 0 there? That's going to let us know. Okay, so we're not even getting close to any highness with the number. So let's see, let's add this, turn this to 25. See what happens with this. There we go. Okay, so once we got to 25, we came above. We'll actually set this to 35. Okay. Okay, what we need to set up is we need to set up the animation for 3 to work like what we see here for 2. So when the animation for 2 is played, this goes to 0. So what we can do is left click here, go to the upper right, click the add new event button. We'll select here, right click, select copy, left click here, right click, select paste. Now we'll just change this 2 to 3, and then we'll just left click on something else to lock that in. Okay, so we'll go to the preview button. We'll walk over. Okay, and now we can see once we get above 50, we have that punch. However, that punch is kind of slow. So what we can do is go to the beat 'em up combo, creative mode, select player, and this is that punch here. So the normal speed is set for 0.8. We can change this to 0.2, and then with that done, we can select preview. With this is set for preview, what we can do is select replay, then we'll select OK, and then apply. And now I'm going to go back to events. Okay, we'll go up to preview. We'll walk over. Now that punch is much faster. Okay, so what we're going to do is set up for the other animation. So we'll select here, right click, copy, left click, right click, paste, left click, right click, paste, and now we're set up for those other animations. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're just going to change this to 4. We'll change this to 5. And then for here, what we'll do is we'll make this be, we'll try this at 60. We'll try this at 65. Okay, we need to set things up so those poses after they play that they go back to the idle. So we'll select here, right click, copy. We'll left click in this empty event, right click, select paste, right click, select paste. We'll select here. We're gonna set this for 4. Left click to lock that in. We'll select here, and we're gonna set this to 5. Okay, with that set up, we're gonna make sure that this is set to the different animation poses. So we'll set this to 4. We'll set this to 5. And then what we need to do is when this here says the number of the player is 0, we need to set this to here. So we'll set this to 3. I'll left click to lock that in. Then for here, we'll select here. We'll set this to 4. Okay, with all that done, we'll go to the preview. Walk over. Okay, so in editing, I had to go change some things. So this right here, I believe in the last save was already done. Easy enough to set it up again. So basically what is going on here is just making this match up for the animations. I apologize. This should be good now. Okay, with all that done, we'll go to the preview. Walk over. Okay, and he's going through. The uppercut is kind of slow, so what we can do is go to the creative side of things. We'll look to that uppercut, which is here. We'll speed this up. We'll make this 0.2. Select apply. We'll go to events, select the preview. We'll walk over again. There we go. There we go. We can see our combo there. Okay, one of the last things we're going to do is go to our creative mode. We're going to go to our hitbox. You might think that you might want to make this be transparent. You can do that through code. However, if we go to Piskel, what we can do is make a new frame, delete these other frames, and then we'll change the color to like an orangish color. We'll put a dot right in the center. Before we do that, we'll add back the frames so that we have 5 frames. We'll select save, and then we'll select apply. We'll go back to our events. Okay, now we'll go to the preview. So we'll walk over. And now we have our hitbox. It's still there, but it's, for the most part, it's transparent, and we have our dot that will pop up so we can kind of see what's going on. So that looks good. Okay, guys, that's it for the tutorial. For all of those of you out there who like the videos on this channel and we share them, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And for those of you who are new to this channel, if you like the videos on this channel, you would like to see more, please subscribe, and thank you for viewing.